episode of Beer, Bacon, and Bros. Tonight, just Chris and Keith. We are going to hop into what's next for the Atlanta Braves following a very disappointing first-round exit. Before we get into that, make sure you smash that subscribe button for us. We are growing our channel, over 145 subscribers now. If you're not part of the family, we want to welcome you to the family. And as always, we welcome you in the comments. Let us know what you're thinking. Something that you may want us to cover, we're always happy to do that as well. And it really does help if you like our videos as well. So, all right, two huge Braves fans. We're going to go ahead and jump into this.
I guess you can say we're homers.
Yeah, we're homers on this. So, but, obviously very disappointing first round.
Absolutely.
Obviously the Phillies are in the World Series right now. Game 1 starting this Friday. But, you still, you just think that you have to beat the Phillies. You beat the Phillies all year long and you're
absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
We hate to see that. But we're going to talk a little bit about the 2023 roster. Obviously, Alex Anthopoulos has done a fantastic job of getting everybody he can basically under contract.
Oh, yeah. No, he's done a great job signing the young talent and signing them to long, very team-friendly deals.
Yes. So a lot of the contracts are backfed as well. So, people like Spencer Strider's only going to make $1 million next year. Ozzy Albies just going to make $7 million.
Well, Ozzy's been $7 million the entire time. His was a 7, or wasn't it a 7? No, I guess they could have backloaded a little bit.
They backloaded his a little bit.
Yeah, because he was a 735 guy.
Yeah. And now, he's you're looking at Ronald Acuna Jr. and Austin Riley both jumping up to 15 and or 17 and 15 respectively. So a little bit heavier, payroll on that side. But Alex obviously said he was going to open up the bank a little bit, and he's doing so. But really for us, I look at the free agent list for the Braves: Kenley Jansen, Dansby Swanson, Adam Duvall, Jake Odorizzi, Robbie Grossman, Luke Jackson, Jesse Chavez, Darren O'Day. Not huge names, per se, but I do think you got to think that maybe you want Dansby back, maybe you don't. Obviously, maybe Kinsley. Do you want Kinsley back? Do you not?
So, where I stand with the whole Dansby thing is, yes, Dansby's probably out of the top 3 shortstops that are out there. Well, 4, because I guess you got to include Trey Turner. But you have to include Trey Turner. But you've got Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts, and Dansby Swanson as your top 4. Dansby is arguably probably the best defensive one out of those. But if I was going to build a team and I was going to put a shortstop in there, I would want a Trey Turner or a Xander Bogaerts. Yeah. Because I want that power. Yes, Dansby can hit for power. He's just too inconsistent when it comes to his hitting. Because we saw it this year where he went through that slump at the beginning of the year where he struck out 80 times in a matter of 25, 30 games.
Yeah.
So, as much as I love Dansby, as much as I'd love to see him stay in a Braves uniform, I really think he's going to go somewhere else. I really think Minnesota comes in and try to sweep him up since they just lost Correa. So I really think he's going to go to the American League. And out of the names that you had mentioned, for what we currently have as a free agent that we can potentially still go after, I think Kenley Jansen probably the biggest one they try to keep, depending on the money that they can try to get him at. I don't think they'll keep Duvall based off of the lack of production that he had. Robbie Grossman was only brought in for the playoff run. He's not going to be an everyday guy for Atlanta. And who was the other big? Luke Jackson was the other.
Jake Odorizzi, Luke Jackson.
I don't think they keep Jake Odorizzi. He came in and did what he needed to do in certain games, but he's too inconsistent to be that fifth rotation guy. I think they're gonna have to go out and get another pitcher.
Yeah, I also agree with you on most of these points. I think Kenley at the right price makes sense for me.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It has to be the right price.
I don't want to see the $16 million again. His market value via what are we on Sport Track right now? $13.8 million. I still think that's a little high for me. I'd like it somewhere around 10 or 11. If we get that kind of deal done, I think for Kenley, I'm good with it. The Dodgers, like you said, have already called knocking. They want a 2-year deal offered to him. They want him back.
The Craig Kimbrell experience was not very good for them.
Yeah. Craig's obviously a free agent, but Dansby's market value via Sports Track we're looking at right now, $24.8 million. I just think that's too high for me for Dansby. High. If I'm going to spend that kind of money, I'm
going Trey Turner.
Exactly. Trey Turner's probably going to be above that. Trey Turner's probably going to be close to a $30 million. But Carlos Correa and Xander Bogaerts, both guys that are around the same age as Dansby. Carlos is a year younger. Xander's a year older. Both guys can opt out. Correa's already said he is opting out. people expect Xander to opt out, so that's why we're considering him in this talks right here. But both those guys, if I'm going to pay that kind of money, I want one of those guys.
Absolutely.
Because those guys strike out less, hit for average
and more power.
consistently. Are they as good defensively? Absolutely not.
No.
Dansby's a better defensive shortstop than both those guys. But I think both of those people also have playoff experience that can step right into this team. So
well, Correa's won a title. Xander's won a title.
Yep.
I mean, obviously now Dansby's won a title.
Yep.
So, I mean, they all have that experience. I just think if you put those guys in that lineup, not only does it give you more power, but I also think it protects Matt Olson more.
Yeah.
Because you put Ronald at first, or you put Ronald leading off, then you put a Xander or a Carlos Correa or a Trey Turner second, and then Matt Olson, and then an Austin Riley. You put Matt Olson in a position like what we had with Freddie Freeman a year ago, the COVID year, the short year when Freddie won his MVP, when he had so much protection around him that they had no choice but to pitch to him, and he just raked. So I really think that you could see that potentially happening if they choose to go that route. I mean, I really think Anthopoulos is going to try to make it work with Dansby. Personally, I would rather see one of the other guys. But
I think for me personally, most of those guys on our short free agent list are people that if you get them at the right price, you get them back. Robbie Grossman, not an everyday guy. Adam Duvall's probably done at 35 years old. I do think that Atlanta actually probably needs to go get one more outfielder.
I agree. I think they need somebody to play left field.
Well,
give me your guy, and I'll give you my guy.
Well, what I was looking over this list is it doesn't make sense to go get Joey Gallo. Obviously, Adam Duvall, we've already talked about it. We're moving on from him. AJ Pollock's probably too old. I think it would be interesting to see Jock Peterson come back to Atlanta. 30 years old.
That was the guy I was going to say.
Had a good season for the Giants. For me, if the money's right, Andrew Benintendi would be a huge get.
Absolutely.
Especially at 28 years old, he fits age-wise.
He fits the mold where we're at right now.
Yeah. And then if you look over in right field, Mitch Haniger at 32 is a guy that we've almost traded for 2 or 3 times over the last 5 years. He makes sense as well.
He does.
Fit him in right field. Ronald can go play left again. And, I mean, he bat-wise and stat-wise fits in our lineup and would give us an advantage as well.
I think he's already come out, though, and said that he wants to negotiate with Seattle and try to stay.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, that's up for question. I mean, anybody can be swayed to go whatever way because money talks, obviously. But out of the people, I would truly like to see like a Jock Peterson back in that lineup. I think he brings a lot of swagger to the lineup. I think he brings a lot of swagger to the team. Yeah. And the team feeds off of that, and I think it helps the team in the long run, especially when you get down to to September, October, going into the World Series, with the amount of time that he spent in the playoffs, and for the amount of World Series titles that he has at such a young age. Yeah. I mean, the guy does nothing but win wherever he goes, except for this year when he went to San Francisco. But San Francisco,
they were a good team. I mean,
they should have broke it towards the end of the year. They didn't do what they did last year.
Yeah, they were missing some star power.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I would definitely like to see a Jock Peterson come in. I'd like to see an Andrew Benintendi. I think if you can get him for the right price, sign him to like a 4 or 5 year deal. Yeah, I think that would be a great ad for them. I mean, he doesn't have the pop that he used to have when he first came out in Boston. No. But I mean, he's still going to be an everyday player who's going to hit consistent 270, 280. I mean, this year he was in the 300s, but they were all singles. So, I mean, which is great. I mean, as long as you get on base and let your big boppers come out and drive you in. But
I think he had like 17 homers. I think he finished the season with.
I'm not saying everything was a single, but his average this year was a lot of singles is what I'm saying. So there wasn't a lot of doubles mixed in. Typically from a corner outfielder, you want to see a couple triples. So I mean, you want to see a couple of those things, and those numbers just aren't there for him anymore. And I think that's just from him battling injuries over the years as well.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't think that Eddie Rosario is going to be the guy that can get everything done. Obviously, like I said, I don't think they signed Duvall. So figuring out who can play that other corner outfield spot makes a huge difference for Atlanta going forward into next season and giving themselves another chance at a title run. But I
think Rosario would be a good utility player to have, a good guy to move in and out of the lineup depending on pitching, or then to give somebody a day off. I mean, they have him for next year. Yeah. He's under contract, so I mean, I think he's a good utility guy. I mean,
Well,
clearly
I think-
this year was a
I
big
think it makes sense
disappointment.
at DH as well because I just don't know that Ozuna is the long-term DH for this team.
They're going to have to try to figure out something to do with that contract.
It's a brutal contract at this point, and I mean, if you can find somebody that's willing to, take him and some draft picks to get him away from us, I would love it at this point. I mean, I don't think that I ever will care to see Marcell Ozuna in a Braves uniform anymore. So, moving on to the final spot, we both agree that Atlanta probably needs one more starter, right? I mean, you have Strider, you have Fried, you have Wright, you have Morton. We don't know what Morton's really going to give us at 40 years old. I don't think either one of us love the $20 million contract for Morton, but
I don't like the deal, but I like him on the staff because I think he brings a good veteran's presence,
yeah,
and he can really help with the younger guys. I don't like paying him $20 million,
yeah,
but I mean that's what he wanted. Anthopoulos was okay with it, so that's what they did. But
yeah. Well, the top free agent pitchers this year: Carlos Rodon, Aaron Nola, Clayton Kershaw, Jacob deGrom, Nathan Eovaldi, Adam Wainwright, Chris Bassett, Tyler Anderson. All those names going to obviously Justin Verlander at 40 as well. But I don't know that you're going to see Atlanta sign any of those top 4 guys. In my opinion, I think those are heavy money contracts.
So, I mean, the rumor has been going on for the last 2 years that when deGrom opts out of his contract, we all know he's going to. That he was going to come to Atlanta. So I feel like if Atlanta was given the opportunity to sign deGrom and they can make the numbers right, I think they would go after it. I think they would sacrifice something along the way to be able to get a Jacob deGrom to come in and pitch with Strider and Fried.
I just don't think that. I think if that was true, you wouldn't have given Charlie Morton $20 million. I just don't know where you can all of a sudden make the money right then and get yourself an outfielder, sign yourself a shortstop, and ultimately find something else in the bullpen to make up for Kelly Jansen. Because you can make the money right now, and you can walk away with deGrom, Charlie Morton, Strider, Fried, right?
Fried, yeah.
And you can walk away with those 5, but you're gonna have Eddie Rosario and maybe Robbie Grossman playing left field.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to have Lon Grisham play shortstop. I mean, he's going to have to be able to come up and move back from third to short and be your shortstop and let totally let Dansby walk and not sign anybody.
Well, you could move Ozzie over to short because technically Ozzie was a shortstop.
Yeah, I mean
so,
that's possible, but
I mean, Alex has already said that he wants to come out and he does. Like you said in the beginning of this video that he wants to open up that pocketbook just a little bit.
Yeah,
and to get a top tier guy like that, you're going to have to open up the pocketbook. And honestly, I think with some of the players out there that you have that you can put in left field, I think you could go out and still get a decent left fielder and not break the bank for it.
Yeah,
because there's still a couple big name guys that can go out and play left field that I think you can get on the cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I like. There's a lot of decent names out there. I mean, Jerkson Profar is out there at left field. Tommy Pham. Jorge Soler is back out there again. So
I mean, you have Brandon Nimmo, you have Kiermaier, you have
those are all center fielders, but
they can play left.
I mean, Kevin Pillar could play left. He's had some moments, but I mean, those are really cheap guys, yeah. But again, from what's on Sport Track, which is a really accurate site if you've never used it before. There's about $30 million worth of payroll available for the Braves, putting them at the 212 payroll that is what's estimated for them this year. So $30 million to figure out who's going to close for you, what you're going to do at shortstop, what you're going to do at left field, and get you a start.
So I don't think the closer position is as big as an issue to Anthopoulos because he does have Minter.
Yeah.
So I don't think, and Minter's a left-handed guy, and you also have Tyler Matzek, who is a left-handed guy. So I don't think he's going to worry that much on the closing position. I think he realizes and he knows that he has to go out and get a starter.
Yeah.
Because it was very clear this year when it came down to the stretch and came into the playoff time, we needed an ace, a 5th guy.
Yeah.
You needed somebody out there to go out and just dominate a game, and we didn't have that. That didn't happen this year.
I mean, I think we had the guy in Max Fried, and surprisingly, Kyle Wright ended up being that guy.
Kyle Wright ended up being the Max Fried this year. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Ian Anderson has fallen off. I do think that there's a spot for Anderson in the rotation long term. He's just a young guy that had a really bad season.
Well, and I mean, if push comes to shove, if you needed to, you could throw Anderson as your closer because he has that good enough stuff to where he can go out and pitch
at least
an inning,
yeah,
and get you 3 outs.
Yeah, and maybe that's what happens.
So I mean, you can play around with the team that you currently have under contract if you want to make that big move. And I think Atlanta has to make that big move if they're gonna want to compete next year because the Dodgers are going to go out and make a move. Well, you know the Dodgers are going to spend money. They don't care about the salary cap.
That's fine. Yeah.
They're going to make the move. And so...
What you worried about the Dodgers for? They're not playing the World Series.
No, they're not. Well, the Phillies aren't going to do anything next year either. But as far as like making moves, unless they go out and pay Nola. But yeah, I feel like the closing position, the closer's role, you can work with what you have. Shortstop, if you needed to, you could obviously move Ozzie back over to short because that was his position when he came up. They moved him to second because of Dansby.
Yeah.
And you have Vaughn Grisham who can play second or short.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have the talent. You have your center fielder. You have your right fielder. You have four starters. You need that 5th guy.
All right? So just as a fan, would you rather see Atlanta pay DeGrom the money and do basically nothing else in free agency except wrap up small deals like Jesse Chavez and Robbie Grossman and people like that? Let Dansby walk, let Kenley walk, let Jacob Rizzi walk. Or would you rather see Atlanta spend money in the small spots, right? Like, let's, go get a shortstop of a decent name, like a Xander Bogaerts or a Carlos Correa. Get a smaller outfielder, maybe like a Mitch Haniger or somebody that's going to make about $7 or $8 million this year. And then I'll go with a random name. We'll go Corey Kluber as the 5th guy in the rotation. Would you rather see Atlanta spend money that way, or would you rather see spend it all on DeGrom?
So, I personally, that's tough because I think if you go out and spend that money on DeGrom, who are the other shortstops that were out there? If you wanted to, because I think you could go get like a Tim Anderson or an Elvis Andrews.
I mean, Elvis, you can't expect. I mean, maybe you can, right? I mean, maybe Atlanta goes and signs a familiar name in Anderson Simmons, right?
Yeah, a guy who's going to hit 240, but he's going to be stellar in the field.
And, still a very good defensive shortstop.
Just put him at the bottom of the lineup and let him work in between people.
Yeah.
I just me looking at this team, I think you need to go and get a top tier rotation guy. You need to get that guy who's going to come in and who's going to dominate a game. Because if you go up and you throw, for shits and giggles, if you get DeGrom, I mean, could you imagine going DeGrom, Fried, Strider, Morton, and then Kyle Wright being your 5th guy, who was a 20-plus game winner this year?
Yeah.
I mean, and DeGrom's going to go, I mean, the only problem with DeGrom is he's very injury prone. That's the only thing that I would want to make sure he's not going to go back and go back to what he's been known for. That's going on the IL every other start.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I'm going to take the option of build my team through multiple players because I look at Atlanta's rotation and I say, okay, if the 4 guys that I got now, preferably if I'm looking at this list, give me Sonny Gray. 33-year-old Sonny Gray, I think would be a really good 5th starter. I think that's a guy that has shown he can be in the 2 ERAs. He's also shown he can be in the 4 ERAs, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to get out of him initially, but I think he's a guy that can give me a winnable game in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
And if I get those 5 guys that we've already named, and I get a decent left fielder and a pretty elite shortstop, honestly, through the names that we've listed, I think I can go win 3 out of 5 at every 5 games. And
no, you could.
Just like the Atlanta that went to the World Series, they won 3 out of 5 games. They didn't blow anybody away. There's somebody out here throwing a 12K 7-inning start, but they won games, right?
Yeah.
So, cool. All right. Any other last thoughts?
No, I think we pretty much hit it all. I mean, I really think. I mean, your take on it definitely makes sense because you can fill up a lot of different holes with that money. I just think they need a pitcher. So if they're not going to go with a top tier pitcher, they need to hit the pitcher right that they go and get.
Yeah.
And whether that's a Sonny Gray, that's a Corey Kluber, that's, Tyler Anderson, whoever it was, they have to hit that pitcher.
Yeah.
Because obviously Odorizzi was not the answer this year. He came up for you big in certain spots, but he wasn't going to be that top tier guy.
No. And by no means did I ever think that Jake Odorizzi was going to be a top tier guy. I think there's a really sweet list of names here between Nathan Eovaldi, Chris Bassett, Tyler Anderson, Sonny Gray, Kyle Gibson, Corey Kluber. After that, I probably wouldn't go any higher than, I guess Martin Perez had a good year this year, or Sean Manaea, but after that, I think that's kind of the sweet spot.
Jameson Taillon had a decent year for New York.
Yeah, he did.
So, I mean, there are some pitchers that are out there. So, I mean, your take on it definitely makes the most sense because you're able to get that top-tier shortstop.
But it's always nice to have the splash. It's always nice
It is. So, but, I mean, you give Fried a chance to figure out whatever was going on with him in those last couple of games that he pitched, and let's try to come back strong. I mean, Strider proved to be unhittable in so many games this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really think he's going to be a 20K strikeout guy next year.
Oh, absolutely.
In a game.
Absolutely.
So.
Okay. Well, hit us in the comments. Let us know what you think about the Atlanta Braves' future. As always, we appreciate you. Like, comment, subscribe.